Since 1956, the southern part of Sudan was fighting for their independence against the northern part of Sudan. It's the first time I've experienced warfare at such a close range, and I was afraid. We hid in the guest bathroom. It was the safest place in our house because there was only a small window on the top surrounded by walls. If we stayed in our rooms, it's all glass. So we all huddled together on Christmas Eve right in that room. Then I went to the hospital, and it was the most horrifying scene and painful scene for me, as well as a very sad scene to see so many wounded civilians. And that number of stretchers on the ground, the hospital couldn't take them all in. If I look back on all these years, knowing that somehow I've been guided by a gentle hand all the way through these moments. And all I can do is share that experience. I am not what I have. I am not what I do. I am not what others think of me. If you can get beyond that and just accept yourself with all your weaknesses, with all, we're all fallible human beings, but just to be me and not thinking I have to make an impression on others any longer. I'm not defined by how much things I have or how much competition with others. Then I can be more authentic.
And welcome back to part 2 of our 2-part series with Father Mike Bassano. In this part, he'll talk about his current work in South Sudan and how he is helping the people there on a day-to-day basis who are suffering, who live in tents, and really are part of this enclosed camp of about 28,000 people. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part 2 with Father Mike.
And now you're living in one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and that's South Sudan. Tell us about that. For those of us who have no idea of a place like that, what is your day-to-day?
Okay. First of all, it's a country that has known nothing but fighting for over 50 years. Since 1956, the southern part of Sudan was fighting for their independence against the northern part of Sudan because the northern influence was more Arab and more Muslim, and the South Sudanese were more black, African, and Christian. So the tensions began. It finally was resolved in 2005, since 1956. And then in 2011, the South Sudanese voted in a referendum to become an independent country. And so they became the 54th independent country in Africa.
Wow.
Independence. But 2 years later, 2013, the political leaders in South Sudan could not get along with each other, the president and vice president. They got their ethnic groups behind them, and we have been in a civil war up to this moment. So that's where I'm at, and I never expected to go there. Talk about the unfolding journey. I was in Tanzania, working at a house of compassion for abandoned peoples. And the call came at a meeting in January, because once a year all the Maryknoll missionaries meet in Nairobi, Kenya for our meeting, just to get together, or else we don't see each other that often. So at that meeting, a proposal was made. This new country of South Sudan needs missionaries. We need to go. Who wants to go? And I could feel my hand up and yet down, up and yet down. I couldn't do it right away because I was just in Tanzania for only 3 or 4 years. I didn't want to abandon the young children, the orphans. But then I knew that's where I was meant to be, somehow. So a year later, I said, I'll go. And it was a tearful ending to Tanzania, because the kids in the home and the adults, and because these were people who were abandoned. This was a home for people picked up on the streets by this priest, Godfrey Biseko, who was a Tanzanian priest. But I knew it was time to go, because he had sisters coming to take care of, religious sisters taking care of the people. He was still there. And our Maryknoll philosophy is we go to a place where we're needed, but maybe not wanted, and we stay until we're wanted, but not needed. So when I knew that the sisters had come and he was still there, I could say, I'll take the call. I'll go to South Sudan. But I remember when I said our farewell ceremony, it was in 2013 in June. Boy, all the kids were crying. I was crying. I didn't want to leave. I cried the whole night, because I think to myself, what am I doing? Am I making the right choices? And you just trust in that process that somehow I'll know if it's not meant to be, I'll come back to them. So the reason I went to South Sudan in 2013, because there was a group called Solidarity with South Sudan, which is a group of Catholic congregations all working together. Now Maryknoll fathers and brothers, as well as the sisters and lay missionaries, we're becoming a smaller group. You know, we're just not getting the vocations. So this is a new way of being together in mission with other congregations. So I figured that was what I wanted to do. So I got there in 2013, and then they sent me right up to this place called Maryknoll. The capital is Juba, and I thought I'd be in that area, but they sent me farther north to Maryknoll. It's on the northern border with Sudan. And so I'm there with a Christian brother, a Notre Dame sister, a Franciscan sister, a Patrician sister from Ireland. Well, what a group we were. In October I was there. I just got started. And as I'm coming into Maryknoll, I looked out and I said, this is all flat. It was all flat, nothing but the Nile River. I said, okay. Didn't know what I was getting into. Most of the sisters were teaching in the school. We have a school to train teachers. I'm not a teacher. So I told them I would do some pastoral work and go just walk out into, because we had a church right nearby, and I would help the priest and then just walk out and meet the people. 2 months later, the war breaks out, and we're caught right in the middle of it, in the town. Our house was right in front of the military barracks. So after only being there 2 months, it was Christmas Eve, we were going to go to church. All of a sudden, everything exploded. The opposing army came up from the southern part of the town. The northern, the government army that was right behind us, our house, started opening fire. So we were caught in the crossfire. They weren't shooting at us, but they were shooting all around. That was my first experience of...
Where did you go?
Well, what we did, the 3 sisters and I, because the others had gone home for Christmas vacation, they got out in time apparently, so we hid in the guest bathroom. It was the safest place in our house because there was only a small window on the top surrounded by walls. If we stayed in our rooms, it's all glass. So we all huddled together on Christmas Eve right in that room, and we just kept praying. It's the first time I've experienced warfare at such a close range, and I was afraid. I didn't think we'd get out of it. I mean, I didn't know if they would come in and shoot us. And all we could pray, we couldn't pray very much. We said, Jesus, save us. Jesus, protect us. That's all we could say.
How long did it last?
Went on for 4 days. 4 days in there. We would come out of the bathroom when the fighting would stop and try to get something to eat. But as soon as it started again, we would all go back because we needed to keep track of each other. At nighttime, the fighting would stop. It seems like the soldiers had their routine. They'd start early in the morning around 7 until 10, take a coffee break. Then by 12:30, they'd start again. Early evening, they would fight again. And then nighttime, just sporadic shots to let each other know we're still here. So
There were a lot of people killed?
Yes. I remember it was very tragic because I walked out of on the fourth day. We could hear the jubilant government soldiers shooting rifles in the air, which meant they had pushed the opposing army out of the town, so there was no more fighting. And so I went out with one sister. The other two didn't want to go, but we said, let's go out and see what's happened, see how the others are. I could see two bodies of soldiers, one with his hand blown off, just left there. And the people told me, don't go over to them, because they were opposition soldiers. But that didn't stop me. I figured they needed a blessing anyway. Then I went to the hospital, and it was the most horrifying scene and painful scene for me, as well as a very sad scene to see so many wounded civilians. We're talking about a little 3-year-old girl that had a bullet wound through here, and that number of stretchers on the ground. The hospital couldn't take them all in. This was the local Maryknoll hospital. So, I mean, and the little girl just looked at me, and I think I gave her a piece of candy, but she didn't know what to think. And I said, I'm not here to hurt you here. I'm just... So it was and then what was hard for me to recognize later, or to realize later, once we got evacuated out, because they did have flights out, we needed to get out. They wanted us out before any further fighting. When the town was attacked again, the opposition army came in and shot everybody in the hospital, killed them all.
Oh, gosh.
If they were of different tribes.
Sure.
I was just thinking of this little girl. Did she get out? So, I mean, that was my first hands-on experience of war. And it was very traumatic for all of us.
But you returned.
What I did, yeah. Well, we went to another place. Once we were evacuated out of Maryknoll, we went for 2 months in a place called Rumbek, to the western part of the country, to teach in a school there, which was pretty safe. But then when I came back home, they wanted me to get they wanted me to go to Nairobi for some counseling too, which I did. They wanted to make sure I didn't have severe post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yeah.
And so we worked through that. I was very honest about my dreams. I didn't have nightmares, but I did every so often have a dream about somebody shooting. There's shooting going on, and I would wake up and there's no shooting. So I worked with that, and then Maryknoll told me when I came back to the States, now we have 2 questions for you. You can go back only if you want to. If there is any dread, that was the word, dread. If you dread to go back, we prefer that you wait. And I looked at that, and I didn't feel that inside. I wanted to be back with the people. And I knew that I would be okay. I mean, I knew how to take care of myself. If it got worse, I would evacuate out and go to Nairobi, Kenya again, and I was with a good group there, this group Solidarity with South Sudan. So we know each other and we support each other. So if there's any danger, we know what to do. So I went back. So I've been there now for 5 years. So,
and I've noticed this entire conversation, you've often listened to your internal voice. Have you felt that you've made good decisions along the way?
All along the way, yeah. I look back with no regret. I knew this was where I was meant to be because I listened well within, but I also listened outside of me to voices of people who inspire me to say, do I do this? What do you think? But knowing deep inside it's my decision. And there isn't a day when I would say, no, no regret. This is where I'm meant to be, and I could feel by the joy and happiness that's within me, as well as the difficult challenges that lie ahead. I know those. I'm not, saying I don't feel that. I know those are there, but I know how to listen well and to take care of myself. So.
And what is your day-to-day now? Are you helping orphans? I saw some photos of you with children and different things?
Oh
What's
yeah,
happening?
I live in a camp where there's 28,000 people displaced by the war.
You live in a camp, let's talk about that, with 28,000
1,000 people
displaced. So explain it to the average person. You're in a field? I mean, where are you?
It's a big open field surrounded by hills and, of course, a big fence. It's a United Nations camp. It's
Okay.
very large.
Are there any buildings?
Yes, there are three sectors of this camp. The first sector is what we call the POC, where the people are, the protection of civilians. Most of them live in tents. So that's one area that's very large.
And are they responsible for their own tent? I mean, how does that work?
No, there are humanitarian organizations such as the International Order of Migration, and there's Intersos, another group that does education work, and then the Doctors Without Borders is there, but most of the UN provides the tents. The International Order makes sure that everybody has a plastic tent, not plastic sheeting on their tents. There's also a group called the Danish Refugee Council that sponsored by the Danish government. They are in charge of the whole camp. It's an NGO that makes sure that everyone has plastic sheeting on their tents, mosquito nets, food, working with the World Food Program. So it's quite a network of humanitarian NGOs working together. So there's about 250 people who make up the non-governmental organization doing humanitarian work. Okay. Now they live in another sector of the camp, so that's the second part of the camp. You have where the people are, the humanitarian sector where I live, and then you've got the peacekeeping troops and offices of the UN in another part. So there's three distinct areas of the camp. Okay. But it's all encircled, so we're all together. It's just to walk from one place to another, it's about 1 kilometer almost. Okay. So I live in a tent with, like a big army camp with 7 other people in the humanitarian hub, as we call it.
So you sleep in a tent?
Yes.
And do you have a mattress?
It's a mattress, a thin mattress, but it's a bed, and we have a mosquito net, and you have a little place where you can put your clothes. That's it. Very Franciscan style. And then the restrooms and the ablutions are outside. Not outside in the open, but in a shipping container. Okay. There's showers and bathrooms for men and women. Okay. That are adequate. I mean, and they're sanitary, so it's not anything. Okay. And we do have an air conditioner in the tent. During the day when it's too hot, it doesn't seem to do very well, but at night it cools things down. Mm-hmm. So but
the people don't have.
They have none of that.
Luxuries.
No, nothing. No. What they get are the basic 3 elements. Education, we have groups like Intersos, War Child Canada, UNICEF, and there's another group working to establish schools. We have about 4 or 5 schools, primary, and 1 secondary. But for 15,000 people and children in the camp, that's not enough. Ages 5 to 17 are all mostly children and young adults, 15,000. So the schools cannot support all that. So most of the kids don't go to school. Some, we split them up in sessions. There's a morning session and an afternoon session in the schools, but it's only for 3 hours. So they learn a little bit of English, math, science. But to think that that's all they get, and they've been there 5 years, we're going to lose a whole generation of educated men and women because it's not adequate enough.
And are there camps like this all over the country?
All over the country, yes.
So you're
the large. I'm in one, 28,000. There's the biggest one is in Bor, which is southwest of us in the country. That has 120,000. Now that's all of one ethnic group, the Nuer. Our camp is composed of 2 groups. There used to be 3, but because of violence, one group was pushed into town. But throughout the country, the number of people displaced in camps is 1.8 million people. Now, the refugees are 2.5 million who have left the country. That's a country of 12 million. You've got almost a fourth displaced by war.
So let me ask you a question. If you had all the money, all the resources at your disposal, can this be fixed?
It can be. Right now, half the people are reaching a famine status. a famine. We say severe food shortages are in the country. People are helping us. We're getting food to people. World Food Program is bringing food in. Maryknoll has had a famine relief program where I've brought money into Maryknoll to get extra rice for the people. They have a little extra in their diet. One lady said, "Tell the people of America, of the Catholic Church, thank you that you have not forgotten us." Wow. She said, "It's the first rice that we have received in 3 years." Because what they usually get is 50 kilograms of sorghum, which is like a wheat-based vegetable oil and some cereal mix. So we've tried to fix some of that, but it's not enough. The fact is the government has to end the civil war. There has to be an agreement between the warring parties to end this so that people can leave these camps and start a new life over again in their own homes. It's not enough just to fix it temporarily by giving extra food. They can't depend on our help for the next 5 years. They need the government to make some substantial decision to end this conflict. And right now, there was a peace agreement 2 weeks ago. Both the opposing party and the government signed an agreement, but it was broken 5 days later with fighting again in the country. So I don't know what is going on. A lot of outside influences come into the country to try to urge the warring parties to stop. You have the African Union, composed of all the states in Africa. You've got the U.S., that's part of Troika, which is U.S., Norway, and U.K., to try to exert some influence, but nothing's, it seems there's a failed state going on at the moment that we can't seem to come together for some agreement. Once it does stop, then the problem will gradually be fixed, as you were mentioning. But
can the United States do anything more?
I don't.
Is it too difficult?
They've tried. There's been some effort at sanctions on the president and the vice president, who have a lot of wealth in their assets overseas. Doesn't seem to be exerting any influence over them at the moment. It's a rich oil country, but one-third of the oil has been destroyed by the war, and most of it goes to Sudan. So we don't know how ultimately it's going to end, but there has to be a resolution of. The people have only known war. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they live with that awareness every day. These young kids that I know Hadia, I know their names, and I look at them and say, I wish you could have the life that I have had. I mean, I don't have to live in a camp like this. But you do, and you have no place to go at the moment. But all we can say all I do is the importance of being present, a compassionate presence, doing what you can to help, to kind of, for the moment, give them some sense of relief and hope for a better future. That's it. You look back and you don't know how much you really can do. Surely I will try to bring some more food. Another Maryknoll missioner is working in Uganda with refugees there from South Sudan, trying to get more food in. But the government can't just rely on humanitarian actors to say, we'll do it all for you. They have to do their part, and that's not there yet. So, but I haven't lost hope. You look at our own history of America. We went through a civil war. We still go through trying times, or Syria or other places. There has to be a time when this will come to an end. So I haven't lost that hope. Mm-hmm. And when you see the people celebrate liturgy on Sundays, African people love to sing and dance. The South Sudanese, no matter what's happening, God will take care of them. Yeah. They have a wonderful phrase, Allah, Allah Karim. God is good. God will take care of us. Sometimes, they inspire my faith. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's reciprocal. I think I come to be with them, but they sometimes do more for me than I feel I do for them. But we do.
And you don't wear a traditional...
No, I don't wear a collar or... It's too hot to wear all those black clothes. Anyway, I've always believed this, that it's not what I wear, it's going to be what's inside of me. If they can't see it from inside, the external clothes aren't going to help much. Except on Sundays, of course, I wear the white.
Sure.
You know, I dress.
Yes.
But I just felt that it's not necessary to, they know who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Just have a few more questions. And we can
Sure.
wrap up.
I hope I'm not keeping you too
No,
long.
no. I understand you have a favorite quote that is attributed to St. Francis, and it reads, "Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words."
Exactly. My favorite phrase.
Break
And
that down for us.
Okay, I think that comes somewhat out of my past too. I always felt, even as a priest, I'm not the greatest of preachers. You know, not that I don't like to preach. As I'm getting older, I do more storytelling and preaching, and I think that means a lot more to me and to the people.
Connects
but
with- yeah.
It connects.
Yes.
But before it wasn't like that. So that phrase helped me realize that it's not what I say. It's more important how anyone sees me living my life. It's a way of living the experience of my faith, not talking about it. I learned that in Chile also, Padre Gatica. There's a pratica, or predica means he preaches, pero no practica, he doesn't practice, you know.
Okay.
We all know that.
Right.
But I've always felt that it's got to come by the way I live. It's not just a once a week thing, it's a daily living of my Christian faith. If they can't see that, then sure, I'll say some words, and I try to write stories about my experience that may help. But it's not so much through preaching now, it's maybe the story of my life or the stories of their lives that I send home that make the difference. It's not all the theology and all the, although that helps deepen one's faith, but it's the ultimate living every day that makes the difference for me. And that's all that matters right now in my own life. I look back on all these years knowing that somehow I have been guided by a gentle hand all the way through these moments. And all I can do is share that experience. And I think that's what St. Bernard of Clairvaux once said, that I always remember this phrase too. I tell you only what I myself have experienced. Wow, I like that
Yes.
phrase. So it's not about talking abstract thoughts, it's what have I experienced? And to share that. So that's how the phrase comes alive for me. It's just sharing the story of my life, which is the story of all of our lives. We all have stories to tell, and great stories about compassion, how we can be compassionate to each other. And that's it. That's all that to me is the essence. And that goes back to St. Francis, of course. He lived a very simple life. It's what they saw in him. There's a story about him too. I remember reading someday, some man came up to him and saying, "You're St. Francis of Assisi, right?" And he goes, "Yes, I am." "Well, I've heard so much about you," he said. He said, "I hope you can live up to all that people are saying about you." I don't think he responded. All he said was, they'll know by the way I live. Yeah. And that's it. That's it.
And in 2013, Pope Benedict XVI resigns, the first pope in 600 years to resign.
Exactly.
And a new pope was elected, and he takes the name Francis. What do you think of him? What did you think about that whole ordeal?
Well, I love that man. I think he comes from South America, Argentina.
Argentina.
And he has a great love for those poor who have nothing. He would go into the poor sectors of his own archdiocese as archbishop. He would tell the priest to go get involved. You know, as he said, smell the sheep. Get down to the grassroots level. Don't stay in your rectories. And so he's the man who is leading the church in a new direction. That let's get back to basics, he says. Not just about doctrine, but how do we live our faith? What he did on a Holy Thursday, his first Holy Thursday, he at the jail, he washes the feet of Muslims. Whereas before we were only told, in those ceremonies, it's only 12 men that you baptize, or not baptized, but wash the feet of 12 men and not women, but he was doing it with women also. He's showing that, what I've always believed. I mean, that's what we do in the camp. This year we had 6 men, 6 women. I washed their feet, and then they went out and washed everybody else's feet during Holy Thursday. But it's because of Francis's example. He inspires me to say, this is what it's all about. It's the lived experience of faith. And he shows that by the way he lives. And then the joy of the gospel. You know, when he wrote that to tell people, let people know that you believe, you know. Let them see the joy that is in you, despite all the suffering and challenges that you face. You know and believe that God is there for you, and you'll get through it. Michael Talbot said that once, you know, the great singer. He says, if Jesus is in your heart, please inform your face.
That's great.
I like that line. You know, let people, you know, so Francis is bringing a human touch, I think, the human face of the church, the human face of Christ, of how Christ would have been and wants us to be. And it hasn't been easy for him. You know, he's facing a lot of, because he's more open to see what might be for the church. Sometimes those who want to keep things more traditional, there's a tension, but that's always been that way in the church. And but I like him. I think he just came out with a documentary. It's like a movie, Francis, a Man of His Words, which I have not seen yet. But that shows again his human side, about the way he looks at you. I saw just previews of that movie. You can see the man is full of the Spirit, that it's from the heart. Yeah. And he's a Jesuit. I mean, he studied for many years. He's got a lot of good theology there. I just think it was the Pope we needed at the time.
What did you think about the name he chose? Are you surprised?
No, not at all. I think I knew, I guess I was surprised because I didn't expect it, but when he chose it, I knew perfect.
Yeah.
And the way he's living, he didn't stay in the papal apartments. He wanted to go in that place where everybody else lives, more simple lifestyle. I mean, when he came to the States, he was driving in that, he was in that little car, remember? I think it was a little car.
Yes, a little Fiat or something.
People were surprised. Well, he's not, he's in his little, that's Francis. That's the simple life that, so I resonate with him in that sense, that he's leading the church in a good way. He's following his heart, guiding us to, and telling the priests. He's not afraid to tell priests either,
right,
and bishops.
Right.
Like the one cardinal in Germany, spent $1 million renovating his house. No, we're not here.
Right.
This cannot be any longer. Let people get out there. Get out there with your people. Let them see that you care about them. So, oh yeah, he's a great prophetical witness for today. So I'm grateful that
you seem to be very transparent and live very transparent. Do I have that right? Is that
yeah,
you?
What you see is, that's me. There's nothing more. I can't.
And can we learn something from that, all of us? How do those of us who have this mask, if you will, you know, because we have to try to live up to expectations or the pressures of society, how do we, the average person watching, what could they do daily to try to break that down, to become more transparent, more authentic, to share their true voice?
I think, Roger, it comes with an accumulation of wisdom over the years. You finally realize to let go of the masks, to let go of anything that keeps you from being you. I remember Henry Nouwen, the great spiritual writer, but he suffered a great deal. And when he was recovering from a mental breakdown that he had, he was told 3 things that resonate with me about how to be transparent. The 3 are, I am not what I have, I am not what I do, I am not what others think of me. If you can get beyond that and just accept yourself with all your weaknesses, with all, you know, we're all fallible human beings, but just to be me and not thinking I have to make an impression on others any longer. I'm not defined by how much things I have or how much competition with others, then I can be more authentic. And then I have the 3 C's, if I always can remember. One is conformity. If I conform and not really listen to my own voice, then I'll never be what I'm meant to be. Comparison. If I compare myself to others, oh, they're better than me, and I'm nothing, and we'll never accept ourselves as we are. You know, there's always others who are greater or lesser. It doesn't matter. I always forget the third one, but it may come back to me as conformity, comparison.
Complacency.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. That you don't really say, I can accept myself as I am, not to know that this is, competition is the other one. Competition, comparison, and conformity.
Okay.
I'm not out to compete anymore.
Right.
I don't want to give interviews to show I'm more famous than my brother Ted. I'm not into that anymore. I'll do it. Only if I'm not putting on an act, you know, in a sense. Now, I know how to do that. I've been in drama many years. I put on another role, but I don't need that anymore. As I'm approaching 70 years of age, I can just be who I am, and that's enough. So all I can encourage people to do is to do that, not to, that will come. You'll learn to be who you are. Gradually it will come. You'll know within you that you don't need to impress others, or you're not defined by your job or by what you have. Just being you is, I hear this word a lot, enough. I am enough. That's it. That's
How important is non-judgment?
I like that. There's a famous philosopher that I've loved in India. His name was Jiddu Krishnamurti. I've read so many of his books that help me, because I love the phrase of Jesus, judge and you will not be judged. So I understand that. But he puts it in a different way. He says, there is the observer and observing. One who is observing does make no judgments. So I see you as you are. I don't make a judgment. Oh, you look better dressed than I do. You have a better tie. I don't have one. You know, it makes no judgments. Where the observer is looking at you, making judgments already. Well, you know, I'm probably more important than he is. I mean, I'll do this. And so that's judgment. He says, if we stay with the observing part, just observe things as they are, without making a judgment. Whether it's government leaders or anything, it's not easy, but I just accept people as they are, accept things as they are. Now, it doesn't mean it's complacency, as we were talking about. You have to stand up for things, but it's not being judgmental of you by your race, your color, your voice, your job, So if I can, I've learned from him, as well as the teachings of Jesus, of course, but to be observing of things. Just observe. You know, when I go into a church and I observe a kid, and I can point him out in the homily, it's a whole different thing than observing, saying, I don't know if I can do this, you know, because the observer puts it back on the I. Observing puts it back, just letting things be as they are, accepting. So I've learned that over the years, so I try to be non-judgmental, or when I am, I catch it.
Yes.
I say, I
more
know
aware.
Yeah, the awareness. And that comes from my experience in Thailand too. The key to Buddhism is awareness of your false self or whatever. And just to be who you are and observe people as they are and be accepting. It's a process. I mean, I wish I could say it happens overnight. Sure. It took me, I'm in it 20, 30 years, but I'm getting a little better at it. I'm not as judgmental. But I admit sometimes when I look at the news and say, what is this guy doing? And then I go back, or even if I have arguments, we talk about things with my brother or anybody. After a while, I think, now how have I been, without analyzing it, just reflecting. Have I been in this mode, the observer mode, or just observing things and saying, well, man, that's what he said, but maybe who knows what's behind that or what, but not making a judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy. I would not, but it's worth that part of the journey, saying I'd rather be observing things as they are, being less judgmental. So,
how about stillness? How important is it for us to spend time alone? You know, again, today, at least in America and most modern day countries, you know, we're just very busy. Our jobs, our kids, our activities, not taking time for ourselves. And how important is that for the individual to be still and just to spend that time alone?
It is essential to becoming truly who you are. And there's a great quote from the mystic, Muslim mystic, the Sufi mystic, Rumi, where he says, quiet, listen to the voice within. And that's what stillness is. Now, it doesn't mean you have to, okay, I'm going to spend 40 minutes of meditation this morning. It's just an awareness of being still, not using words, just sitting there, or even if you're on a bus, or even if you're in the car driving, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be, or in a monastery, or it doesn't have to be in the church even. But if you can be simply aware that you are still, and to let yourself be without doing, just being. And in that stillness, I believe you do listen to voices. I don't mean, but you'll come to understand who you're meant to be. You'll sense some things within you. Sometimes it's just sitting on a bus, like I came up from the bus from New York, and it's just looking out from 81 going down to Binghamton, the beautiful countryside, not saying anything, but grateful for the connectedness with all of creation. I believe that's what's helped me in those still moments. That's when I listened to those voices. Whether it's the voice of the Spirit or your true voice of who you are, however you define it, doesn't matter.
Sure.
But it's just to be still. And you will find a sense of inner peace that comes with time also. Yes, indeed. So I believe that. I take that time for quiet. I also call something that I practice every day called imaginative faith. Now that's not my invention, that's Anthony DeMello.
Okay.
Because I've been doing something for the last 16 years that I thought, well, maybe this is crazy. I have a journal where I write down, after I'm quiet, what I think God is saying to me. Now that sounds strange. And I call God the Beloved. And that's, mystics always have called, not that I say I'm a mystic, but that's what I like that name. So, and I write, your beloved looks upon you with love this day. And I write it down. I hear that being said. Now, is that me saying it? Is that really God saying it? Anthony DeMello said, it doesn't matter, but it's to have a sense, what do you believe God would be saying to you today? To you.
Yes.
In a positive way about your life. And I've been doing that.
That's great. And how do you feel by writing it down? Do you feel like, okay, I'm putting it out there, putting it out, and getting it?
Like a prayer, you mean? Or
yes, you're just releasing it from within.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It goes out, it's like, and I remember some of the phrases, your beloved delights in you. And that in my nothingness, you are everything in me. Is that my invention? Maybe, but is that God speaking? It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I got that confirmed when I read DeMello's book. It was an old book that he had written giving retreats years ago to Jesuit novitiates. And I found it. It's called something centering on God or something. But it confirmed what I'd always been doing. He said, even when you do that, you will hear the presence of God speaking because you're in silence when you're thinking about it. And then at the end, I always leave room, my response. Thank you for the day, and thank you for the...
Sure.
And I still do it. And I send it to my spiritual companion. She's the Maryknoll contemplative sister. Her name is Grace Meyerjack. So she gets all these journals. And I think Michael McNeil, I gave him some, or Sister Grace gave him some. But that's a way of also being still, but a way of imagining, what would I really believe God is thinking about me in a positive way?
And do you encourage this as a practice for people to try it?
I'd have to say I never have. I don't push it because I'm not sure what people would think, but I have others look at it and read it, and they would say, well, that's very nice.
And let them do what they will.
And let them do what they will.
Sure.
I guess my approach is I gently offer, but never say, this is the way to
Right.
I think each of us finds our own way of, on the spiritual journey, how to become more authentic, transparent, and to find a deeper relationship with God. It's not something I can say that, now this is your way. If it helps, fine. And that's what I have learned, I think, over the years.
So I can't let you go without asking about the Cannoli Brothers.
Yes. It was wonderful. The Cannoli Brothers, I don't know when we started that, but it came from an experience where my other two brothers and I always wanted to sing together and play together. Paul played guitar and so did I. Paul also played the banjo and I learned a little bit. And Ted was kind of like the lead singer, the older brother. And whenever we get the family together, we would play. We'd have concerts together. But what happened was when I was at St. Thomas Aquinas Church in Binghamton, we had what we call a parish picnic. And we'd always have certain acts come on, singing acts or drama. And so Ted, Paul, and I decided, well, let's do a song. And I remember a song that I had written in St. Anthony of Padua, a church in Utica, about the cannolis. I don't know if we did it then, but we were certainly ready to do it this time. So we practiced, and there it was. It had to be around 1979, 1980. And we just introduced ourselves as the Cannoli Brothers. And we sang some songs, you know, like from the 60s, folk song, If I Had a Hammer, Blowing in the Wind, and with harmony. Ted would take the higher harmony, I would be the baritone, and Paul would do the lower. And it really brought us together as brothers. And since we were Italian and we were going to use this song, we said, well, let's call ourselves the Cannoli Brothers instead of the Bassano Brothers. And it's a funny song. It says, we love those cannolis, they're made in Sicily. We love those cannolis, they're made for you and me. And it's a crazy song, but it brought us closer together. And as you know, my younger brother died very young of diabetes, so we miss him. He was only 34. But he's still, I believe, with us in spirit, because whenever Ted and I meet with family, Ted always has the guitar in his car. In case we need to bring it out again, the two of us will lead the family. And so the Cannoli Brothers really was a gift for, since we were kind of all spread out. I was way overseas and we wouldn't see each other that often. This was a great way to be together.
Sure. Father Mike, if you could make a phone call to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
I would say, congratulations, you've come a long way. You never thought that the journey would unfold as it has. It is not something that you could have planned yourself. There was something guiding you all through this journey that has led you to this moment in your life. And I know you wouldn't have thought it then, that you would have had so many experiences in different places, different countries, experiencing the lives of different people. But that has formed you into something that you thought you would never become, more yourself, more at peace with life, with all the challenges that lie ahead. So yes, you've come a long way, and there's still yet more things that are in store for you. So be open to whatever, be yourself, and all will be well.
Love that. And one last question before I let you go, and I ask every guest this, and that's, what do you want your legacy to be?
That's a very good question. As long as it isn't something about me, it's not me, it's something greater that was at work in me. And as you say that, I remember someone saying, "What do you want on your tombstone?" I would still say the phrase that I remember writing, "In my nothingness, you are everything in me." Or that you are the one that led me this far. It was not about me. That's all I can say.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending so much time with us, sharing your story. I cannot wait to share your story with the world. And hopefully when you come back to town next time, we could get together again.
Fantastic. I would look forward to that.
Thank you so much. I love story. Our lives are story. We engage through story. Now that I am doing American Real, I am able to help tell other people's stories. And there's an art to that. I want people to be inspired by the content. And it's not me, it's the guest. I want them to learn from the guests, as I'm learning from the guests. And once you start to see progress, to me it's motivating and makes you want to work harder to get to the next piece. Now you're pushing us to record episodes. So I had guests in, and I'm learning the technology. And of course we had many challenges and lots of resistance, but I don't know, you just persevere, because when you have a passion for something, you find a way to get it done. I think the biggest breakthrough, I would say after episode 3. And the guests, a couple of guests came up to me after saying, "Thank you for that interview. This was the best interview of my life." That's when I knew, okay, I'm on the right track. I need to keep doing this. I need to tell people stories. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because when you do it, you'll be surprised the response that you receive. If you're interested in starting your own podcast, join me in Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information.